We're continuing our conversation about pitch by taking a moment just to talk about the clefs that we're going to be using. As we mentioned in our last one, this is the treble clef, which is also called the G clef. And this is the bass clef, which is also called the F clef. Now, why are they called the G clef and the F clef? Well, this clef identifies G and this clef identifies F. G is the first space, our first line up from this, and this is F is the first line down from this. So they sort of surround that. You'll also notice the circle going on here. On the F clef, there's a dot on F, and then there's a dot above it and below it. Now, why these things? How did we get them? Historians have a lot of different theories, but one of the prevailing ones is that this was actually designed to represent the letter G and the letter F. And you may think I'm kind of crazy for a moment, but if you think about the letter G, over time, we didn't have printing presses, we didn't have computers. These were all written by hand with quills, calligraphy, and all of the parchment and things like that. Over time, musicians who were in a rush, you can easily see how this when it gets ornamented and decorated over time could turn into what we know today as the treble clef. And so we have this sort of steady progression from the G, identifying that's where G is. And some people even think that the loop on top came from identifying the G on top as well, to this right here. For the F clef, it's actually a cursive F. So if you want to pull way back to when you were writing in cursive, maybe you still do. It seems like a lot of people don't write much in cursive. But if you think of a cursive F, looks like that. And then we think about that getting rushed. It's not too difficult for us to think about how it can turn into that. So again, this is identifying G right here and F right there. Now let's talk about a third clef. And this third clef is really an entire family of clefs. This is the C clef. And in this specific place, it's referred to as the alto clef. But much more so than the others, this clef was moved around. The others did get moved from place to place, but they pretty well settled into these spots. But the C clef, even to this day, will get moved around to different places. Now, I've referred to it as the C clef. Well, it's got a little arrow in the middle, and this note right here is C. And I know we talked about the origin of these clefs. With the C clef, it's a little more opaque. So don't sweat too much about where's the C in that. Concentrate more on there's an arrow right here, and there's a dot above and a dot below. So what this does is it identifies that that middle note there, what the arrow is pointing to, is C. And then it's giving you two notes above and two notes below. So you can think about the note above it would be E, and the note below it would be A. That's where my arrow and my dots are for that clef. And then there's just a little loop that connects the arrow and the dots, and there's two lines there as well. So that's our C clef. Now in this position, it's alto, but if I move it to other positions, it could be a tenor clef, or it could be a mezzo-soprano clef, or it could be any number of different things. This is used most commonly in strings. The viola reads the alto clef almost exclusively, and the cello hops into the tenor clef with some regularity. If we think about this, that means C is right there, and then D, E, F, G, A, and we think down, B, A, G, F. So you'll notice it sits on the middle C that is right between the treble and the bass clefs. This note right here or right here, same note, is also that note right there. So it sits right in the middle of those two staves and sort of has the same idea, except that the notes are shifted a little bit from what one of those clefs is to the other. Some people will come up with mnemonic devices for these. You'll notice that they're very similar to the spaces and lines that we talked about with the other clefs, but they've been shifted. The lines are spaces and the spaces are lines. Um, but we've got good boys do fine or face G, um, whatever you want to think of that helps you remember these, just like we said with the other clefs, to work on the alto clef, then that will help you there. Alternatively, if you're not yet to the point where you can memorize this, just thinking in terms of counting every two letters, which is what you have to do with the other clefs, will help you get better with this one as well.